How's everybody doing today? Good. You know, I'm sure somebody's going to ask me, you know, what did you see in the film that, you know, you didn't talk about after the scrimmage? And I would say the number one thing would be inconsistency in performance. You know, there was a lot of good things, but it wasn't all the time. And, you know, consistency in performance sort of defines success, so that's what we strive for. That's what we try to get guys to do. And, you know, you want everybody to make a commitment every play, every day, to do the best that they can do. And, you know, 1 year from now, you know, you wish you started today. 17 days from now, you're going to wish you started today. You know, content people, you know, are not really the kind of people that we would like to have on our team or in our organization. You know, we want competitive people who want to compete every day, playmakers who want to make plays and, you know, be somebody of significance on the team, and we want leaders to lead, you know, every day, to affect people, set a good example and affect people in a positive way, so that we can grow together as a group. And, you know, really these 3 practices that we have, this is always a tough week. You know, first week people are excited to start football, first scrimmage, all that. Then you kind of have this week, which is really kind of hump week. Have another scrimmage, get a couple days off, then you start school, and, you know, we're practicing once a day. So, and then the game's coming. So it's really important that we get a lot of things covered, you know, this week, that we improve a lot this week. Everybody's focus has got to be on that. We try to cover a lot of situations, you know, this week in practice. We have a lot of installation in, so we're really, you know, trying to cover situations that occur in games, whether it's 2 minute before the half, you know, get the ball back at the end of the game, you know, whatever it might be, so that when those situations come up, we're ready for them. And we're also taking a lot of situations that other teams present for us, whether it's on their offense or their defense or whatever, and trying to expose our players to some of the fundamental things that we don't see every day from our own team. So, you know, that's kind of what we're, you know, really trying to accomplish this week, with the focus being on improvement, consistency in performance. Improve your consistency as a player. Brandon Ivory and Jaron Reed were in pads today, so their acclimation period is over. Leon Brown continues to have his, you know, this week. Dominic and Ashawn are both still out, probably will be out for, you know, at least this week. And, you know, Geno Smith is doing a little bit, very limited, and so is Brian Vogler, but, you know, everybody else is going, and those guys are going to be doing more and more each day. So we should be good with those guys by the end of the week.
Did you get the production that you wanted last year out of your tight ends and H-backs, and ideally, what do you look for out of those positions?
Well, you know, I think every team is a little bit different. I think Brian Vogler really played well for us as an on-the-line tight end. I think, you know, O.J. Howard, for a freshman, had an outstanding year. So I think we did get a lot of production out of those guys. But those guys have got to be multi-talented. You know, they have to be able to block. They have to be instinctive players that can find openings in the passing game and, you know, become threats as receivers, as well as being very physical players. You know, for us, it's hard to run the ball when you don't have a good tight end if you want to stay in regular people. So, you know, and Brian has done a good job in that regard. We want him to continue to play with more power and be more physical. He is a good receiver. O.J. is a good receiver. I think we really need to add quality depth at that position, because that's an area of concern, you know, past those 2 guys. And Dakota Ball, we moved from defensive line to tight end, which he played in high school, and he's done a really good job in this camp. And, you know, Ty Smith is a new addition who's making progress. So, you know, there are some other guys that we are coaching, and they're getting better.
Asking about Reed and Ivory, how have they transitioned back, and how do you see them learning from the mistakes they've made?
Well, you know, they're on the 3rd team, so they got to work their way up. I don't think it's real fair to the guys that have been out there for 14 days practicing, on the first and second team. They got to beat them out. They're not entitled to anything. And they're working hard. They're doing a good job. And, they're getting plenty of work. So, they certainly have to improve as football players. But from a behavioral standpoint, they have done a really good job, and I'm pleased with them.
I want to ask about Sean Dion Hamilton. How's he grown from the spring to now?
He was having a really good start of camp. I guess he practiced for 4 or 5 days before he got hurt, but had a really good spring. But for a freshman, he was very, very productive for us a year ago. Really played well, and we have really high expectations for what he can do this year. And we're looking forward to getting him back so that he can get the kind of turns that he needs, that he can go out there and play with confidence and be in the kind of condition that he needs to be in to be the kind of player that he wants to be.
I know Gino's a guy that can play kind of those multiple roles in the secondary at Star and Money. Who are some other guys that are stepping into those roles and kind of learning the versatility there?
Maurice Smith and Cyrus Jones, we both played them multiple roles. We taught Eddie in the spring to play multiple roles. A lot harder last year when all these guys were first-year players. Like Marlon and Tony Brown, we try and teach them one spot. We don't teach them any multiple roles. Just like all those guys were first-year players last year, we didn't, as DBs at least, we didn't try to teach them multiple roles. And at times, it was a little bit difficult for us because we didn't have a lot of flexibility. So, Gino's now playing safety and making good progress, and he can still play star, and Jarrett can play safety, star, money. Landon can play safety and money. So we have a few more guys that Nick Perry can play about every place. So when you have experienced players that have gotten a lot of turns and really understand the concepts, it helps your flexibility.
Coach, at the end of last week, there was both the autonomy vote and the O'Bannon vote, and I know you're really focused on camp, but just you've talked before about your general feelings about financial aid for student athletes and doing more for football players, and do you see things moving in that direction?
Well, I don't really know anything about Ed O'Bannon. I don't really know much about that, and I kind of count on our administrators, our commissioners, and all the folks that we have to sort of, decipher all that information for us and, create a path and a direction for us that is something that we can implement with our players. But I have spoken in the past and will continue to speak that I think that we should do more for players. I think it's important that we keep the amateur status of players so that we don't lose the spirit of college athletics. But I also think that, cost of an education should be a part of the scholarship for a player to improve the quality of his life relative to the impact that he makes on the institution by representing the institution. So that has nothing to do with any case or any vote. It's just how I feel.
Last one, quickly, Mark.
What have you seen from Landon Collins this fall and just his progression as a player and kind of developing a leadership role on defense with the young guys like you were just talking about back there?
Landon has really had a good camp, so far. Landon's, obviously a very good player for us, but, it's always fun to coach when you have the guys that are the good players on your team, that are the best guys, that give the most effort, that give the best example, that hustle, that are conscientious, that are, sort of always setting a good example for the younger players. And he's got a much better understanding because of the experience that he gained last year of what his role is, what he needs to do, and he's always been a guy that's made a lot of plays. So, we're inspired by his leadership, as well as the kind of player he is, as well as the kind of person that he's been. And I think every player on our team would probably reiterate the same.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you.